All right, let's call this meeting to order, shall we? Good. Very good. All right then. All right. Opening of the meeting. Stephanie's in the way. Up. Meeting is called to open at 1939 hours. 1940? Oh, I said 940. Well, you said 940, Mr. Mayor. Well, you can write down what you wish. I move that the agenda be adopted as presented. Seconded by Councillor Zant. Anything to add? Well, we have about 50 minutes left. I know that we usually close shop at 10:30. Are we going to prioritize the rest, or? Well, I believe that there's a gentleman here from Morris Village, item 9.2, draft plan of subdivision, stage 5 space builders. Yeah, I believe he's here in attendance. I have no problem. Well, let's go on to 9.2, and we'll directly go to the two others that are in the room. Let's go on now to the draft plan of subdivision, stage 5, space builders. Of course, we still have to approve the agenda, Mr. Mayor. All those in favor, then. Declarations of pecuniary interests? None. Let's go on to Morris Village. The Planning Committee recommends to the Municipal Council the approval of the draft plan of subdivision submitted to Space Builders Ottawa Limited. File number D-12-122 with the conditions of approval listed under Section 7 of Report number AME-18-13-R. Seconded by Councillor Lalonde. Were we supposed to add anything else? No, that's about it. Any questions then? All those in favor? Well, there was a gentleman here that wished to address the issue. Well, we've already taken care of this here. I do have a question here. I took a look at the plan, Mr. Mayor. Now, we previously discussed at the planning committee level this particular issue. There wasn't much left to be dealt with, but we do have a letter from the United Counties of Prescott Russell that deals with a low density area. There's no mid-density patches around that area, and I know we can discuss this at greater length with the contractor, because there's another road apparently that is supposed to connect up to Caron, but does not connect to Caron, and I believe that we need to tell space builders that this road needs to connect to that road, or the town can do so. We need a connection to get onto that road, because the amount of traffic on Saint-Jean Street would be, the amount would be hellish. Well, we commissioned a traffic study. It doesn't change the fact or alter the fact that a traffic study can come up with conclusions that might be approved by some and disapproved by another. But this road that starts from Saint-Jean stops at another property before going on to Caron, and we'd like to determine who the owner of that particular property at which this road ends at or stops at, what his intent is. If there will be some space builder shovels there, even though this is the roadway is covered by gravel, and even though it shall not be asphalted for many years, but I'm in agreement with Mr. Zant. If these roads are not connected from the very get-go, we're going to wind up with Saint-Jean Street with no connection to the downtown core. Now, I don't know how they're going to go about developing this area, but we need a direct connection from Caron, because this roadway will be deemed as a main street at one point in time. Can we ask that this be looked into, Mr. Leonard? Well, yes, we can look into this, Mr. Mayor. However, I'd just like to bring to your attention the fact that this is a multi-phased project. Well, what does it how do you know that Sterling will not be prolonged, as is the case at present, instead of this other one that will be connected? Well, I do understand that this will be deemed to be a main artery in the future, and there are other streets to be built throughout that particular multi-phased project. I know that that won't be the only means of coming or getting out of that subdivision. It's part of our official plan to ensure connectivity, so all future requests guarantees that connection will be made. Well, I'm just asking that an extension be granted just to look into this. And to mandate town administration to look into it further. Well, I second this motion. Well, of course. I'd just like to add the following. The onus is upon us to ensure that all projects are okay. Maybe, if we don't dot the, dot the I's, in 5 or 10 years, folks are going to ask us, what were they thinking? Take a look at what's happening in Orleans, those major projects behind Millennium. Orleans, if I'm not mistaken, build the streets and say, here they are. And then you can build around that area. Here are the main streets that we've determined through planning. Now, and if I might be mistaken, because I'm not a builder, but, well, as things stand, what we're asking if is a connection that leads on to Caron. I'd like to determine who the owner of this property is, and the town administration get into contact with that individual, even if that individual does not wish to pay. I believe we're talking about 100 feet worth of 100 feet worth of property here, even though it's covered by gravel, and how we can absorb that cost if we need to purchase it, and how space builders can go ahead. Well, we're looking for the cost for the extension. Firstly, to ensure if it's possible that the owner can ensure that a connection is made, that he build the connection. I don't want to prevent this project to go ahead, but I want a new resolution to mandate that it go ahead. But if it does take time for it to take off or go ahead, we might as well, we might as well put in that condition. Well, if space builders, honors the conditions put upon them, and if it takes 2 years for this project to reach that particular property, we're talking about an extension of a few 100 feet, well then, that's fine. I just don't want to put a hold on a project right now. Well, you see, we're discussing this at a committee of the whole meeting. Let's take a look at possibly if the owner, who the owner is for this property or not. Can we do this within the next few weeks? Yes, we can. But if we're not able to contact that individual, well, we have no problems in performing the research you request of us. That's why we come up with a motion. Just to verify that a connection be made onto Caron Street, and then we can approve this particular project with a separate bylaw. Well, I spoke to the developer because I didn't take part at the planning committee meeting, but they'd asked, just to answer the point that you're raising here, they'd asked if it was possible to purchase the property right beside that one, but the individual did not stand ready to sell that property at that time. That's why it didn't go ahead. But the project that we're dealing with at present needs to start at Saint-Jean because he has to install what needs to be installed in phase 1 of this project. So the project starts there or begins there. And I spoke to the developer and I said I'm going to bring that to council. For the purpose of protecting the streets that are in the Morris project, we should encourage the builder to make use of the streets around Saint-Jean as much as possible and not Sterling to proceed with the construction of houses, because Sterling is part and parcel of property that was transferred to us along with phase 4 of this particular project. But this was going to be done one way or the other. I just wanted to make you aware of this information. Well, once we approve this, do we lose our say in insisting on having a connection to Caron? Well, look, the onus is upon space builders. We might just consult the owner of the property and say, well, look, we need connectivity. And if he doesn't stand ready to do so, well, if the space builder is there, all we'll have to do is to put on a layer of gravel. Well, you could put in a temporary road. Yes, yes, but the owner needs to be in agreement with this. You have to expropriate him. Well, if we don't approach him with this particular intent, we won't know. Mr. Grimard allows for the existence of a temporary road to green light the construction project, basically. Fine, fine. In any event, there's a part of Caron that has not been deforested yet. Where does that road lead to? Well, at present, as things stand, we are now called upon to vote on the resolution that is before us now. And then we'll suggest obtaining more information with regard to the entrance leading on to construction, to green light further construction. Who's in favor of this particular resolution before us now? All those in favor? In favor of the resolution as it stands right now. Well, I need a guarantee, an official connection here, not just a gravel roadway. Well, why? Look, we already have. Well, look, if you listen to what, while I was listening to what was being said, I like when construction starts, that if the very last part left is still in gravel, up, when construction is done until Caron, I won't have any problems because vehicles will be able to exit Caron. This is not our property unless we enter into an agreement. Which vehicles are you alluding to? Well, our residents' vehicles. Well, then they can't make use of the gravel roadway. Well, why not? We don't want to damage existing roadways right now. But that's not what he's saying, Mr. Mayor. Well, no. All right. Let me explain this. This is not our property. It belongs to someone else. If we want to enter into an agreement at the very start to allow us to build a temporary roadway, and at the end of the project, if everything's paved over, there would only be this small section because it's not ours unless the city of Clarkson-Rockland wishes to pay for this. But there might be at least, that's why I suggest, a connection during the course of the project as it's ongoing and at the end of the project, that a formal connection be established. We do have a letter in hand that calls for medium density or high medium density, but we don't have any. It's 100% high density. Well, that's to our advantage because when they build apartments elsewhere, they take up all of the available circumferential space. I'm just saying that we go against the county's recommendations. Listen, we're the ones that decide what needs to be done or not. Now, if we get involved in a development, it needs to it needs to connect officially to Caron. We can't make use of Caron or Saint-Jean. I don't want a gravel road. I want an official road. That's what I want, the official road to look into this. How much is the land? How much is willing to sell it? If Space Builders wants to buy it, then we should buy it. We need a connection. We're the ones building the city. We need it to make sense. Well, I'll vote for that, certainly. As you stated, I'm in agreement with what you've said. I'm in agreement with that. Well, of course, we're dealing with density-related issues here, but this is not applicable to a particular phase or a subdivision. It's applicable to the whole of the city of Clarkson-Rockland. I know that there's a higher density in that area, and if you take all into consideration, the density within that particular region does meet the conditions set out in principle for those matters that come into play here. Well, don't forget, with regards to Brégild, people complained because there were going to be some apartment buildings built there. So we give permission for single-family dwellings to be built, and now somebody comes up and says, well, you should have, multi-family residences. I'm just saying that we have a planner that talks about 10, 20, or 40%, whatever it is. He throws it in our face every time we discuss these types of plans. So what I'm trying to figure out, if that's the way we want to go, well, that's fine. I'm 100% in agreement with that. But my biggest problem with this thing is that we need a road, an actual connection to Caron, permanent. Yeah, but we've got a study, a road study that's going to be available to us. Did we not commission a study with regards to roads that we're taking care of? We paid for that. Well, why do we even move on this before we obtain study, before we can obtain the study? Because you'll quickly run out of space to build in Rockland. Well, guarantee they'll come back and say, hey, we're not doing it once we get the study in hand. Well, look, in any event, we don't know. They don't own the land. But what I figure out is, can we buy the land just like Ottawa would do? And here's the right of way. We can do so. Well, that's what your traffic commission study was paying for out of the development fees. If the study states you should have one road and it should come out on Caron, well, that's part of the conditions, right? There were how many conditions to that? There were quite a few, weren't there? So are we going to vote on this? Well, yes, we'll vote on this because the traffic condition study stands. We have to wait upon the traffic study that we've commissioned be forwarded to us. All those in favor? Carried then. Well, thank you, folks. Thank you. So the recommendation remains as is. Yes, it does. Delegations and presentations. Ladies, presentation by Karine Lauzon from the Clarence Rockland Chamber of Commerce for the Downtown Revitalization Project. Good evening, one and all. My name is Karine Lauzon, Assistant Director of the Clarence Rockland Businesses, and I'm accompanied by Chantal Charette, the 863 studio. And we'll be dealing with a plan that was prepared by a company that we hired. Initially, I would like to introduce to you the members of my board of directors that work alongside with me, Mrs. Andrea Delorme, Mr. Marc Simard, Luc Potvin. We also have Émilie Avon, and we also have, oh my God now, yes, Mr. Luc Filion, who left us, Mr. Luc Bélanger. We also have Anne Lisotte. We also have Ms. Stéphanie Simard and Melissa Brunet, as well as Patrick Brunet, who sit on our board of directors. Those are people that you no doubt know of. And the mission and no doubt our vision with regards to this project was to revitalize Laurier Street. But it's also a project that was initiated by IDEAS. The Chamber of Commerce is there to cater to the needs of the commercial sector of Clarence and Rockland, but without giving more privilege to a sector as opposed to another. Now, we're called upon to initiate a first phase, and tonight we'll make you aware of our initial thoughts to develop Heritage Park. I apologize. There are some projects that do exist, governmental project that would help us in revitalizing our core, and I hope that these would help us in asking for grants. Now, we're very open. We're presenting to you, we're offering to you this project, but the Chamber of Commerce begins, in fact, begins its slew of presentations as of tonight, and it's important for us to make this initial presentation to you tonight, and I have many follow-ups and contacts to ensure will be done with many associations, social organizations, as well as the Heritage Committee that I have to contact in the coming weeks. So if you'll allow me, even though it's 10 p.m., let's put some life into this meeting. So I'll talk to you about this project, and it's for information purposes that we do so. Now, we will have you see the video completely. That the video deals about our dreams. We've dreamt without any limits being put to our dreams. And then I'll have Chantal take over from me to explain to you what the extent of the concept is. So, this is the intersection here. We're starting off with the intersection, and now you see La Violette and Laurier.
c'est la
Now,
Violette.
we're talking
Ouais,
about this
puis Laurier.
area
Donc, c'est de cet
located
espace-ci que l'on parle, qui est juste à côté
right beside Pimorin
Pimorin
Automobile.
Automobile.
There we go. So,
Donc, on
with
prend
regards to
certains
revitalization of the
plans
downtown core, what's
Dans
important to
une,
bear in
dans une
mind
démarche
is
de
this.
revitalisation, qu'est-ce qui est
We
très
need to
important, en fait,
create
de prendre en
dynamic
considération,
living
c'est
spaces.
de
Now,
créer des milieux
when
de
we're
vie
dealing with
dynamiques.
dynamic
Là, je vois en
living
même temps,
spaces,
donc
we're
quand
called
on dit ça,
upon
des milieux de vie dynamiques, c'est aussi de
to
rendre
create,
des
espaces
verts,
meeting
des espaces comme des
places.
rassemblements.
A very
Je pense que
important
c'est là
part of
aussi
our project
l'essentiel.
that
Et ça
will
va être de venir
cater to the
joindre
needs
le
of
côté
merchants
de,
and
autant
residents and
commercial,
offer
autant
products and services
résidentiel, mais
aplenty
autant
on the
produits et
main street.
services
Now,
dans
from
les
that point
milieux
on, we started to
Moi, à
dream
partir de
without
maintenant, on
limits.
s'est mis à rêver. D'accord? Juste pour
And we
qu'on
simplified
prenne
things. Now, with regards to
ça dans un niveau
revitalization,
là,
what
très simple.
we often
Dans une
come
démarche de
across
revitalisation,
in
qu'est-ce qu'on voit
Hawkesbury, for
beaucoup,
example, who
soit
made
comme
great
à
efforts to
Hawkesbury, qui ont
revitalize
fait
their
un très
downtown
grand
core,
effort,
or
ou
other
encore
sectors
dans
in
d'autres
Quebec where
secteurs au
most
niveau
of the
du
parking
Québec, où
spaces
est-ce qu'on voit la
are
plupart des stationnements qui sont
located
mis à
behind
l'arrière
businesses.
des,
Chantal will
des
deal with
immeubles.
the technical
Clairement,
aspects of
Chantal
this,
vous
but I
parlera plus
add
du
my
côté
comments
technique. Moi, au moins, je
as
vous
the video goes
ajoute
by. Now, it
commentaires
stands to
dans
reason that
la
putting in
C'est certain
more
qu'en reverdissant
greenery,
aussi, en ajoutant des,
adding
donc,
additional
côté
green
arbres,
spaces, it
verdure,
makes
ça
our
rend vraiment
Main
notre,
Street
notre rue
a more,
principale avec une,
a more
en
pleasant
fait, on
area
utilise ici,
to
nous,
walk
le mot
along,
densité.
where there's
Donc, une
more,
densité où est-ce qu'il y
there
a
are more
moins de
trees
béton et
and
beaucoup plus
less
d'espace vert. Ça vient un
concrete,
peu
as it
venir,
were, or
simplement,
asphalt,
faire le
or both mixed together quite nicely. Also, you have a document. We see here that there's
Aussi, vous avez un document, là, on voit
there's
très
some
bien ici
signage
un
here,
système
and you have a
d'affichage,
document
donc un système
in
d'affichage
your
avec pancarte. Vous
file
avez
that
le
deals
document
with
dans votre dossier,
these
mais on n'en prendra
this
pas,
multi-signage
ça sera pas un
arrangement that
document
we're
qu'on va
promoting, but
travailler
this was sent to
aujourd'hui
you for
ensemble.
information
C'est
purposes.
vraiment un
You know, to
document assez
encourage our
informatif pour la Chambre de
merchants
commerce pour
to
pouvoir
ask
encourager
for
nos commerçants
grants
à
to
déposer
ensure
une
renovating
demande de
renovation of
subvention
their
pour
store
soit
frontage.
rénovation de façade ou
And
encore
Chantal,
mise en
members of
scène.
her
Donc, nous, on
team,
s'est créé, en fait, avec
came up
Chantal,
with an
on s'est
explanatory
créé un-
document that
un
would give us the
document
proper tools here at the
explicatif
Chamber
pour
of
nous
Commerce
outiller
to
la Chambre
go
de
ahead
commerce.
with this.
Donc, si vous me permettez, on va,
And I'll have
je vais
Chantal
laisser la
talk to
parole à
you about
Chantal, qui va venir vous expliquer vraiment le côté du,
the more technical aspect of this project. All right? Good evening, one and all. Good evening. Let me reiterate. My name is Chantal Charette, the Studio 853 Design, and we deal with landscaping, of course. And I've worked for a long time with landscaping firms where concept plans of what you've seen were drawn by us. I was involved in numerous projects of this type, and we're trying to determine what kind of proper approach would be good to adopt to make the downtown core interesting to be in. So what we're trying to do at present is to make the business area more appealing for people to go to. What we've heard from people is that, you know, businesses are spread around and does not have this knack of having people get together and gather around a particular central focal point. Now, around the PM Morin Automobile, we might have an area designated for people to get together. People might go there, might travel there by car or on foot. And what happens when you meet in a gathering place? Well, you might have a coffee. If you go by the storefront of a shoe salesperson or a shoe store, then you might just purchase a pair of shoes. But at least it gets you interested in everyday life or in the everyday activities ongoing the
on a
downtown
fait une
core.
approche
Of course,
qui
we've
est,
come up with those plans
ouais,
that,
esthétique,
you
c'est
know,
sûr, mais il est quand même
give
aussi
a
pratique,
strong
parce
nod
qu'on
to
a un élément
an aesthetic
structurant
standpoint,
qui peut être
but
pratique
also
pour
that
d'autres
allows
activités que la ville a déjà, comme la parade du Père Noël,
many
ou,
activities to be held
tu
throughout
sais,
the
pendant
year,
la,
for
il y a,
example,
il y
the
a
Santa Claus
d'autres
parade
parades
or
pendant
other activities throughout the year. Maybe other associations that are
mais
part
nous,
of the
peut-être
community
pour
might
d'autres
meet there at
associations
that
qui font partie de
gathering
votre communauté,
place.
ils
We're
peuvent
talking
se
about
rencontrer
benches
là
being put
aussi.
in there,
Donc, on
planting
parle
trees,
de plantations
interesting but not too
intéressantes, mais pas trop demandantes.
doesn't
Des
require all
revêtements,
that
des,
much
des matériaux
with regards
qui
from
parlent de la
standpoint of
communauté aussi.
resources.
Donc,
So
ce
what
qu'on
we're
voit là,
dealing
nous,
with here
dans notre conception, on parle de des
are
choses
local
que, il y a quand même
businesses
beaucoup de
or local
travailleurs
workers
là-dedans,
that
beaucoup
can help us
d'entreprises
to
là-dedans qui
implement
peuvent nous
this
aider, à mettre ça
or
sur
these
pied
plans.
aussi.
And
Puis,
really,
dans l'entremise, c'est
what
ce qui vient,
helps us to standardize this space. It makes it more interesting for the local consumer and to invite the average consumer to walk onto Laurier Street. Right now, it's not as interesting as it should be, but let's say we want to get there to live an experience, and that's what we're trying to promote if we go through that project. If we go through with that project, you know, if we put up terraces, you might offer services to people, but people are not, you know, impressed only by services they receive, but by the experience they feel. You know, just take the time to breathe in the surrounding and read a magazine, and let's say if you're at a restaurant, have a meal, maybe have a dessert or two desserts. I might invite my work colleague to join me up at the restaurant I'm at or the terrace where I'm at. And if at present, when we walk down Laurier Street, well, we quickly come to the conclusion that it needs a little bit of love to breathe new life into it, basically. We need to spread that love that it needs, spread it around, and also make sure that we can come up with a gathering space, a park, ensure also that we have a gathering place that is in a key position at an intersection, basically, where everyone goes by, where it can be a meeting place that people go by, whether they have a choice or not, they go by there. And also it will identify the business, the Rockland downtown business community. It's not always evident. And how do we go about making it evident? Well, through proper landscaping, how streets are taken care of, street lamps, what's being planted there, and all other businesses involved. And we won't elaborate on the signage, but all businesses involved in the signage, multi-signage that we've proposed. Now, we prepared a document that was handed to you, and you'll have the opportunity to take a look at as time goes by. This being said, we need to create or give ourselves an identity. As all self-respecting businesses, we're talking about a logo. You know, if you see the Nike check mark, everybody knows that the check mark is akin to a Nike pair of running shoes. But when you take a look at an image, it would be nice to see, for folks to say, hey, this represents Rockland and I went there. Why? Because it was a memorable experience for them. People need to feel like they are compelled to come and see us. But we need a space similar to what I have alluded to. We need to create it. And along with our Chamber of Commerce friends, we came to the realization that it was possible to do so, with your help, of course, everybody's help. And also to add on to what Chantal has already stated, and on this particular project, the Chamber of Commerce may give some support with regard to this, but we need the community's participation also, because the City of Clarence and Rockland, of which you are proud representatives, you are in charge of those projects going ahead. So we're talking about a multifunctional park or
parc multifonctionnel
a
où,
diversified
diversité,
area where people of all
où est-ce que
ages
tous
can
âges
meet
peuvent
and
quand
greet
même,
each
là,
other.
se
And as I
se
stated
rencontrer.
initially in my
Puis comme
presentation,
je disais
it was
d'entrée de
very
jeu,
good.
il y a quand même
Well,
une très bonne,
it wasn't only just a
pas juste une
very
très bonne, mais
good
une
opportunity, but
ouverture
we have an
à
opening
rencontrer
to
le
meet
côté,
with the
comité
heritage
du
folks.
patrimoine. Parce que
And
sans
this
eux,
particular
on serait pas
park
ici.
is
Puis,
quite significant
ce parc-là
for
est très
Rockland as
significatif
a
également pour,
whole.
Rockland.
We've given you a brief overview,
Donc,
but bear in
ici, on
mind
vous a
that
donné un
other
aperçu,
main
mais sachez
streets
que les rues
of
principales
other
des
in
autres
other
secteurs de
sectors
Clarence
within Clarence
Rockland
Rockland
pourraient
might have
aussi
its own
avoir une
might have
identité
its
pour
own
que
or their
Clarence
own
Rockland
identity.
ait
So,
une même identité partout
but
où est-ce qu'on va.
we want
Donc,
to
on s'en va là où est-ce qu'on dit
standardize
souvent le mot
basically
uniforme.
the
Donc,
look,
ça va être
a
uniformisé
particular look
partout
throughout the
dans,
city of Clarence and
l'ensemble
Rockland,
de la cité.
from stem to
Puis en
stern.
terminant, vous avez
And I hope
également,
that you've had
eu, du moins,
occasion
je
to
vous
read
avez
this
lu,
request
c'est une demande
this
de
grant
subvention,
request
à la-
made
qu'on fait
by
la
the Chamber of
Chambre de
Commerce
Rockland à la
to the city of
cité
Clarence
de
and
Clarence
Rockland to
Rockland
help
pour,
us
pouvoir, dans le fond, mettre de l'avant la
foster
planification.
planning.
Actuellement, le travail qui a
We
été
already
fait est
have
rendu,
implementation
on a déjà les plans
plans
d'implantation,
drawn up.
parce que c'était
Wi-
dans,
These plans go
c'est ça,
hand in hand
c'était
with the Chamber of
l'initiative,
Commerce
là,
initiative that was
de la
taken
Chambre
up to
de commerce
now,
d'aller
but we
jusque-là.
need it
Donc,
now
on a
to
nos
establish.
plans
We need
d'implantation
now
faits,
to
maintenant,
establish
c'était d'établir les phases.
phases.
Donc là, vous
I'm
savez,
at the
je suis,
Chamber of
à la Chambre
Commerce
de
only
commerce
3
seulement
days per
trois-
week, and I hope that
3 jours par semaine.
more days will be
J'ose espérer d'avoir,
given me in the
plus de
coming
journées
months. But
aussi.
quite simply,
Qu'est-ce que
we
je veux
work
dire
on
par
a
mon
project by
message? C'est tout
project
simplement,
basis,
c'est que
you
nous, on
see.
fonctionne par
So
projet.
if we are in a
Donc,
position
si
to
on est en mesure
create,
de
to
pouvoir
support
créer ou,
our
aider
city
ou
in this
soutenir,
type of project that at a
supporter
certain
notre
point in
cité
time
dans
will
un type de
foster
projet
you know,
que va
dynamic
vraiment
living and
dynamiser
dynamic
le
living
secteur.
and give
Nous,
rise to
la Chambre de
dynamic
commerce,
living
on est là vraiment pour
spaces
le
in
démarrage.
Clarence and
Et c'est
Rockland.
pour ça
That's
qu'on
why
fait
we're
une
asking
demande
for
de
help
financement ou de
to the
subvention, en fait,
tune
d'un
of
montant de
$15,000
pour pouvoir procéder
to
à,
ensure
la
further
planification
planning
et,
and ensure
la suite,
proper
dans le fond, là,
implementation
du,
of what needs
de
to be
l'implantation,
implemented and
et tout ce qui a
to
trait
set up
aux rencontres
meetings
aussi de
and
consultation
consultation
qu'on-
meetings
qu'on a
with the
et qu'on
population at
juge
large.
serait bon
Do you have any
d'avoir aussi
questions?
avec la population. Voilà, merci.
If I
Avez-vous des
understand,
questions?
the $15,000, that money you're asking is for the 853 studio,
Non, pas du tout.
dealings
Actuellement,
that
le
you're
Studio
having?
863
No.
travaille avec nous.
the Studio
Nous, la Chambre de
853 is
commerce,
working
ça va
with
être
us,
vraiment
but
pour,
we're,
avoir,
we're
un
going to
enfant
have
plus
have
d'air
someone
au niveau
that
des
will work on
ressources
this
qui va
revitalization
travailler sur ce
project.
projet-là de
Now,
revitalisation.
for
Et juste comme ça,
there's
pour vous le
a
laisser
grant
savoir,
application
il y a quand même un
project that
projet,
can
de demande de
be adopted
subvention qui
by
peut
the
être fait
Chamber of
par la
Commerce
Chambre
for
de
this
commerce
particular project and
pour ce
forwarded to
projet-là
the
particulier
proper
afin de
government
pouvoir
authority
déposer,
so that it
au
may
niveau,
be
du palier
approved.
gouvernemental.
well. Who now through your $15,000, the Chamber of
C'est
Commerce
via
of
votre
Clarence and
15 000
Rockland
que la
transacts
Chambre de
directly with
commerce de Clarence
Studio
Rockland
853.
transige directement avec le
One
Studio
last question.
853.
For the young lady, Chantal.
Oui.
Chantal, do you have any type of
Madame
experience
Chantal.
with this type of project?
Avez-vous de l'expérience avec ce genre de projet-là? Avez-vous déjà fait des
Well, those companies that we had occasion to work with in the past, but now I have my own interior design company as well as park-related designs. Can you give me an example? Which town did you have occasion to work with, or city? Well, we have a few in Ottawa. I might just visit them.
Juste pour aller le
Well,
voir ou aller...
all areas will be quite different because all areas reflect different needs. Different areas, they will reflect different needs. Mr. Leonard, I believe it's a great initiative, and it coincides with our stated goals. We have a capital expenditure program in 2018 that deals with revitalization of the downtown core of Laurier Street. And it calls upon engineering services, and it requires us to come up with a unique concept working from a blank canvas that needs to be painted as the years go by or the days or the weeks go by. So, of course, you'll obtain some grants if things are successful, yes. Let's make sure, though, that this is part and parcel of the grand scheme of things now. The city of Clarence and Rockland wants to promote the downtown core and revitalize it. And we'll be hiring a consultant to come up with a design and a plan. And this is in keeping with our budgetary forecasts for 2019, whereby the costs stemming from this efforts will be paid by through our 2019 budgetary forecasts, and we will certainly come up with a way of working together. Thank you. No other questions then? No? Well, the only point I'd like to raise is this. Definitely, if you are undertaking this project, you need to work in close cooperation with the recreational and community services people here, as well as public works, all right? And the heritage people also. Yes, without, of course, forgetting our heritage folks. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your listening to us. Thank you. Number 5, petitions correspondence. Invitation to participate on the SNC Forest Conservation Working Group. You've received this letter. Notices of motion, comment or question period, none. So what are we going to do with this invitation to participate? We're just going to file it? Yes. Yes, of course. All right, item 9.1. 9.1, 2017 accomplishments. We have a list of accomplishments that lists what we've done until 2014. We borrowed a lot of money to make sure that these projects were implemented. You know, bridges and bridge-related projects and work-related, road-related projects. I just like to make people aware of. Well, in 2016, we had the right of 25% of our gross revenue to pay our debts. In 2016, we were at 8.5, and in 2017, we were at 8.7, and in 2018, we'll be at 7.5. We don't have, financially speaking, then, the city of Clarence and Rockland is in great condition. We've invested $5 million right now, and we have unused money left in our coffers. There's an investment that was set aside, money that we can tap into at any time, and tax arrears were reduced by 1/3. Arrears were 1.7 million in 2017 as compared to 3.6 million in 2016, a 53% reduction. Just to make you aware that things are going very well, and we hope to continue as we have started out. Well, report 009 with regards to the 2017 accomplishments be received for information purposes. Seconded by Councillor Grimard. Any questions then? All those in favor? Well carried then. Thank you. 9.3, free weekends at the landfill site. Mrs. Simard. Well, the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approves that the 2 free weekends at the landfill in the spring be abolished and that the free weekend at the landfill in the fall be maintained. Seconded by Mr. Berlinguet. Any questions? Mr. Levert, why do we wish to abolish 2 complete weekends? That doesn't entail all that much of a cost, does it? Well, we know that people make use of this facility each and every year, but, well, Mr. Leonard, why do you want to abolish the 2 spring weekends? Well, those are free weekends, so we're losing potential income because it's free, and there's a cost that is absorbed by the city of Clarence and Rockland because we still have to maintain the site. We also have to pay for our employees' time and services they offer on those days, and the trend does show us that there aren't as many people that make use of the landfill site during those particular spring weekends. And we also have occasion to manage other services quite well, recyclables and or some used items that can be picked up every second week or so. It reduces the traffic to the landfill. To be quite honest, there, citizens do miss out on 2 free spring weekends, really. Well, should we not at least have one free weekend? At least leave one weekend available. And have one in September or one during the fall. One in the spring. I wouldn't abolish 2 weekends. Councillor Guillemot, I'm completely in agreement with you, Mr. Mayor. And I think, and I wasn't aware that each and every second week I was allowed to put major items on the corner and be picked up by the City of Clarence and Rockland garbage collector, and I'd be charged an extra $10 for that. Let's just reduce by one weekends the free access to the landfill once in the spring and once in the fall. And let's publicize that fact. And let's take a look at what will happen. If I have major items to put on the side of the road, it's only going to cost me $10. It's only going to cost me $10 if I wish to do so. We know when to put out plastic refuse. But if I obtain a $10 ticket, I can put a major item at the corner of the street and it'll be picked up. I wasn't even aware of that practice. Let me tell you, if you don't allow access to the landfill site, you'll wind up with a lot of garbage in the ditches around here. We're the only municipality that ensures that type of service. But I think we need to publicize, to give publicity, to publicize what we are doing and to publicize it entirely. Councillor Lalonde, of course, if we close it up during the weekend, you'll wind up with a lot more tonnage worth of garbage that will need to be picked up by our garbage collector. So we'll leave it at one weekend during the spring and one weekend during the fall. And I would ask also that this service be publicized where you can have major items be picked up in front of your house, subject to a $10 fee, and that you can do so every second week. Yes, it's seconded by Councillor Rosen. And by the way, seconded by Mr. Levat, I'm sorry. Well, I'd just like to know, do we need to buy those coupons online? Do we need to go to the post office? You'll make sure that everybody's aware of this? Yes, everyone in favor? It's not yet 10:30, sir. Hold on there. Item 9.4, gas supply. Yes, Mr. Mayor. The Committee of the Whole recommends that Council adopts a bylaw authorizing the Mayor and the Clerk to sign a 38-month contract with W.O. Stinson and Son Limited for the supply of fuel and gasoline as per report number INF 2018-02, and that a further recommendation that Council authorizes the staff to extend this agreement for additional 2-year, one-year terms subject to the approval of the Director of Infrastructure and Planning. So what we're talking about is that we're called upon to pay the price of the pump, we purchase that, and that's it. No. We're talking about the RAP price. That's the price charged back prior to taxes. For example, the fuel would be 4 cents more than RAP price. Well, cost, if you wish. What's RAP price? Cost at cost price. So 4 pennies more over the. So the RAP or rack price would be inferior, lower than the price that you could get at the pump at Ultramar, for example. Yes, it's lower. Fine. but it changes each and every day. The right price is assessed and reassessed each and every day. It's revised. Councillor Lalonde, well, my question is this. I take a look at the companies involved, but McEwen has not been invited, and I spoke to McEwen people, and they've never made a request. They've never received a request to submit a tender. These folks are from this area, from Wrightsville or Maxville, and as far in my eyes, Maxville or Wrightsville and Prescott Russell, same thing, because there are a lot of people in Prescott Russell that work in our neck of the woods. Well, Stinson is local also. Well, there's Stinson here, but also in Ottawa. Well, we went through a competitive tender process, and the invitation was extended to all companies to bid on this. Well, the McEwen folks didn't get it, didn't get that invitation. Well, they could have been made aware of this if they would have consulted our website, quite simply. And throughout the United Counties of Prescott Russell, these companies, those that have tendered, are often the same that tender for similar type projects. Well, McEwen is in Bourget. When I dialed the central number, the Bourget people answered. I know. Well, the person responsible is at the Kingston office. Yes, Councillor Lalonde, but the onus is upon them to do what needs to be done. And this call to tender is public. All those in favor, carried then. All right, item 9.5, Mr. Levert. Whereas the construction of the planned townhouse dwellings located on Block 281 of Plan 50M-308 has been completed in conformity with the site plan agreement file D-23974, 2378, and 2382 Marble Crescent, which are now able to be sold individually. That Council adopts Bylaw 2018-26, being a bylaw for the designation of lands not subject to part lot control for Block TH14, part of Block 281 of Plan 50M-308, Parts 1 to 17 on Plan 50R-10682, located within the residential project of Marble Crescent in Moores Village in Rockland. Seconded by, well, that was quite a mouthful. I think he deserves, it's easy to second this. Now, are the buildings built with sound barrier walls, and are they fireproof? Yes. Yes, that's right. And the law requires them to do so. Mr. Leonard, yes, this was installed from stem to stern, and they are. These buildings have been built, and we're just talking about severing the land, the property on an individual basis here, but they're all about others that have been built there, though they did the same thing in those instances. Mr. Lalonde, these are properties that were not subject to the same conditions. Well, you see, they worked on the block individually, but after that they severed lands to build individual homes, and there's also an easement afforded to people that need access at the back also. All those in favor? Thank you. Item 9.6, Protective Services Monthly Report. Mr. Guillemard. Certainly, Mr. Mayor. It is recommended that report number PRO 2018-008 with regards to monthly statistics be received as information. You see, Mr. Lefebvre, it wasn't all that long, was it? It wasn't all that lengthy of a process, was it? You see, you're giving a quick nod to Mrs. Simon. Questions, Councillor Guillemard? Well, I think it's quite informative. And, sometimes I'm wondering what's going on, and I believe that the Bourget train station will see a lot of action going on. See a lot of action, but given with the Fire Master Plan, I think they'll work pretty much hand in hand. I'd like to offer my sympathies to our, Mr. Sarrazin there, to our fire protection people there. Our firefighters worked very hard. I know that they spent a number of days. It's unfortunate that somebody lost his life, but we offer our heartfelt sympathies with regards to that. I'm sorry. Mr. Wilson, 18 dogs caught at large last month. In generally speaking, the dogs are returned back to the owners. Yes, the vast majority are picked up by us, and we trace them back when they have dog tags to their owners. So yes. Do you know how many of those dogs were transferred to
Would you know how many of those dogs were transferred?
to our dog pound? I believe none, because they all had dog tags. Well, that's fine then. All right, Miss Collier, are we? Well, we did. Okay, all those in favor, by the way, of adopting the Protective Services Monthly Report. Other items, number 10, does anyone have any questions? Yes, only one, Mr. Lalonde. I just came back from the north. Most of the municipalities have Franco-Ontarian flags waving in front of their municipality, but here in Prescott and Russell, I guess most of them, if not all, except us, have it. But in front of City Hall.
We have large one right at the entrance.
Sorry.
No, but in front of City Hall, talking about. Pardon?
Well,
What?
we don't have a. Well, we do have a flagpole.
Flagpole in there, and
Is it
just
possible
put
to have the Franco-Ontarian flag
Is it possible?
hoisted there? We were the second municipality in Ontario to declare ourselves bilingual. Do you know that? So the Franco-Ontarian flag should be put up, and should wave proudly in front of our City Hall. That's one of Helen's late night
This is one of Helen's late night.
jabs or stabs at humor. Well, if you ask me a question, I'll
Next
answer,
time you ask me a question.
and I can revert back to French, and we can,
I'll do it back
Mr.
in
Mayor,
French to you.
as you mentioned earlier
Mr.
on, we're
from,
obtaining $53,913 for Laurier Street. Now, what I'd like to bring to your attention, Brian, I wanted to make Bruce aware. Brian, oh, no, Brian, he's been called a lot worse. Don't worry about it, Bruce, Brian, doesn't matter. Even by Councilor Lalonde.
By Mr.
Well,
Neal alone.
I was approached by the corner store
I was approached by
next
the,
to Saint-Jacques.
Dépanneur du Coin, the corner store,
You know,
next to Saint-Jacques.
the corner store, not the gas station, but the corner store. And he's got two signs over there. Ever since he bought the building, these signs were there. And now
Ever since
he
bought the
changed
building, they were there.
the publicity of the
And now he
advertisement
changed it
within those signs contained there. And he was advised by the bylaw enforcement officer that he cannot have this advertisement put up there. Well, I'm not familiar with what this is. It's right across from the Potvin building. Do you know where that is? I know exactly what you're talking about. He's got two in there. I'll look into that then. Well, thank you.
He's got two in there.
Councilor Berlinguet,
Thank you.
how much are the fees again to have access to skating rink? For ice rink time, did you increase or decrease the fees to make? Well, I have a request from the Clarence Creek Skating Club complaining that they had to pay for an increase in accessing a skating rink. The increases were in effect as of when? Well, I don't understand because ice rink fees don't increase much before September comes around. No, but not before then. Well, that's right. Okay, any other questions? Adjournment called at 10:32. Thank you, folks.